I created the wooden material here, this black wooden material, and I applied it to the various objects in the scene. Probably you noticed from the previous render that the UV maps are not so well created and applied to these various elements, and I have a kind of distortion on the wood, especially for this door and this table, and I will fix them later in the fine-tuning part. Now I want to do the material for this plastic box. So I start again my active shade. I right click and draw the region. So I just want to render this element. So I create a new material, a new V-Ray material, and I rename it in black plastic. And don't forget to assign the material to your selection. So now V-Ray is rendering this object with my new material. You can see it's dark. Instead of a flat color, so here instead of the full black or full white color that I can apply to this object, I can use a map to increase the quality. So I can open the maps. Here I have different maps. And until now we saw the bitmap, that is an external texture, a raster image applied as a label to our material. But we also have a lot of procedural material. So they are maps created inside the scene using some specific parameter to define how the pixel and the various text cell over this object must be colored. I use the Falloff that is useful to recreate a Fresnel effect over the surface. By default, the Falloff has this black and white. So let me just for the moment change this in two very specific color and very bright color that we can notice over the surface of the object. And you may notice that the color is passing between one color to the other according to the incidence of the rays of the camera to the normal of the surface. So if the rays of the camera are directly to the normal of the surface, so if the normal has 0 degrees from the camera, we have the first color that is also known as a front color. While if the rays of the normals are perpendicular 90 degrees to the camera, we have this side color. The transition between one color to another is obtained with this linear gradient. So we have a 0, that is our red color, our front color, for what is specifically directed to the camera. And we have this green to what is perpendicular to the camera. Here we have the flat gray, so 50% effect, 50% mixture of the two colors exactly in the center, so when we have 45 degrees. But if I add the point, and I move this point, I can affect the persistence of one color over the other. So I can affect the transition between the two colors. Beware, because this gradient doesn't change according to the color that we have here. The black, the original black color, now is substituted with a red, but here still is black. Also, right-clicking, you can convert the corner to Bezier smooth handles. So you can have a smooth effect of transition between one color to the other. This effect is very good for the material that we want to create, the various materials. So let's consider this object as a very dark plastic. I can derive the plastic and I can obtain something brighter. The result is something interesting because I can have this shading passing from one color to the other. Now I get focus on my material, so I can use 2 or 1 as amount of darkness for this surface and something really dark for the other part. I'm not so interested in the shading of this object, but for sure you can notice that we have this transition between one surface and the other without working on the reflection. So I still have to work on the reflection. In this object, I can have a certain amount of reflection. I can activate or deactivate the Fresnel reflection. Now, because this is a plastic, I don't want metallic reflection, so I keep this activated and I have this map visible. And I can change the amount of glossiness. This object changes the glossiness of the reflectivity and the reflection as we discussed with the floor. So if I use here 0.9 or 0.8, I will have less sharp reflections. You see, they are blurred. And this gives a more natural effect to my object. And this gives me the feeling of kind of reflective plastic, not so glossy, with 90% glossiness. The map that I applied here on the diffuse color can also be applied to the reflection. So if you want, you can apply a Falloff also to this reflectivity, and you can have a transition between 0% reflection to 100% reflection. As you see, now the object is very reflective on this surface, but is not so reflective on the front. It is represented by this surface. I want to keep a little bit of reflection on the front part, and I want to reduce the amount of reflection on the top part. And as fine-tuning and last parameter, let me reduce this value to something like this. Now I can turn off my active shade and I can render all the image. If the glossiness is not satisfactory, you can revert to the previous value.